I found myself in need of a multi-entity inventory for a game project I was working on. Now, I have done some inventories in the past, but I was never really happy with how they turned out. They've always been rough around the edges and difficult to expand upon. Not to mention, multiple entity support was out of the question. I did manage to hack a working inventory using a few data structures into my project, yet I still found myself wanting. So I set out to make the most modular and efficient multi-entity inventory possible, and I've decided to bring anyone watching along on the journey. First up, I think we should take a look at how this inventory system is going to work. The inventory data is going to be contained in a 26 by X DS grid, where X is the number of entities and a DS grid is essentially just a fancy 2D array. Each entity's inventory is going to be a 5 by 5 grid, comprised of each row of this array, starting at the top left and going down. The 26th cell is used for moving items with the mouse. Each cell of the data structure is going to contain a 4-digit string, such as 0108. The first two numbers are the ID of the item occupying that cell, and the second two numbers is the amount. This cuts down the need for multiple data structures. The data for each item is going to be held in a similar structure, where every row is a separate item, and each column represents a piece of information about the item, such as what to draw to the screen. The item system is efficient enough, at least until the information you need to store becomes too complex. Though I won't be covering it in depth in this video, the system is quite modular by nature, and allows the player or the game to create new items on the go. For the actual programming front, I'm going to be using GameMaker Studio. This decision is primarily driven by the fact that GameMaker Studio is where my game project is being made in. I'll put a download link to the source code down in the description if anyone's interested in taking a look at it. But keep in mind, even if you don't use GameMaker, these concepts can be applied to all languages. One last thing before we start programming. I'm sorry about the time-lapse portions being kinda fuzzy. I forgot to set chronolapse to capture in PNGs instead of JPEGs, so the overall quality took a dip. This won't happen in the future, but sadly by the time I noticed, the damage to this video was already long done. Before I could get to the fun stuff, I had to make a few basic assets to draw the screen, but that wasn't too much hassle. Next up came preparing the groundwork of the inventory, such as the data interpreter and the data structures. This was fairly straightforward, though I did make a couple mistakes along the way. Things were starting to get interesting as I programmed in the drawing of the inventory, not so much because the programming was tricky, but just because you could really see the inventory coming to fruition. There were a few bugs along the way, however those weren't too much of a hassle to patch, and it went by quick. With the basics done, I thought it was time to program in the movement of objects around the inventory, though it was only in a basic manner for now. With no excuses remaining, it was time to get on to the more nuanced movements. I was dreading this part, mostly because I knew the programming was going to be monotonous and prone to bugs. Luckily though, I did manage to push through. With the GUI and behind the scenes part of the inventory officially done, it was time to move on to implementing in-game objects to affect this inventory. This part was fairly simple, though I did run into a rather annoying bug that took me longer than I'd like to admit to fix. Overall, I wasn't happy with how I ended up implementing these objects, but it was the best idea I could think of at the time. And now we arrive at the final step, making use of the items. To demonstrate this, I made the 3 colored potions change the color of the background, a process I thought would take seconds, but actually took me around 20 minutes due to a hilariously simple drawing bug. So this is what the final inventory looks like. It's not too bad, honestly. It kinda reminds me of Minecraft. But the real impressive part, and the part I'm showcasing, is that this inventory does pretty much everything I wanted it to. Though I never really got around to programming it here, it even has multiple entity support. So here you can see me starting to use these objects to affect the game world and the inventory as well, which is a must. So the inventory was done, and I got a working project that does essentially everything I wanted it to. I decided it was time to take a step back and look at the project objectively, deciding what I did good on and what I did bad on. Breaking down my original intentions, I'd say I had 3 simple goals. First was to make an inventory that could be implemented into any project. Second was to make that inventory as efficient as possible. And third was to make that inventory modular enough that changes to it were simple and on-the-go item creation was possible. I believe the first goal is the one that I did best on, considering that the system is self-contained and with a few simple lines of code can be implemented into any project. Of course, you're going to have to put in your own item information as well as program a unique item interpreter, but that's kinda to be expected. The second goal is where I fell short. The GUI interaction code for the inventory ended up becoming a long set of nested if statements, and a few other aspects, such as adding items to the inventory, still felt hacked in. I keep looking at the code and finding myself strapped for ideas to fix these more rudimentary aspects, yet I can't shake the feeling that there has to be a way. The third goal is a hit or miss. There's definitely a few parts I could have programmed in a much more modular way so that you wouldn't have to toy with the inventory code as much when implementing it, but ultimately, these are just slight annoyances and they don't detract from the inventory system itself. Overall, I'd give this project a semi-successful rating. While I didn't fully achieve what I set out to by any means, I did come out with a functioning model of what I wanted that just fell ever so short of the mark. Though I'm not sure if this is something I'm ever going to be revisiting in the future, at least in the form of a video, I did find the process quite enlightening and I hope those watching felt the same way. Thank you to everyone who followed me along on this journey. I hope everyone got something out of it. For those of you wanting to take a look at the code, I'll leave a download for the GMX file down in the description, as well as some helpful resources for anyone trying to reproduce this system in another language. If you've enjoyed the video and want to see some more content in the future, make sure that you like and subscribe, and if you have any questions or want to discuss something about the video, make sure to leave a comment down below.